Thank you so much. And before we jump into the main components of this presentation, let's go over some quick housekeeping with some options for your participation. Just as a reminder, please keep your microphones muted. We are very excited to have you here and looking forward for your comments and questions. And there are a couple of ways that you can provide your input. One is in writing. You can share your questions and comments in the chat box. And we will also be conducting polls. And basically what's going to happen is that Zoom will prompt to answer the multiple choice questions when it's time. But most definitely you can reach out after the meeting via email or via phone, and the contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation. And if we don't get to all of your questions today, at the end of this meeting, we will be able to follow up with you. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the meeting, please, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. The staff will be monitoring and responding to the chat as we go. Additionally, at the end of the meeting, we will provide the opportunity for you to give comments and ask questions. So when the time comes and you would like to speak, please, you can use the raise hand function in the reactions menu at the bottom of your screen. And when it's your turn to speak, you can unmute yourself and start your comment. As I mentioned, if you have any questions or comments throughout the workshop, please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen, which is shown here, the box right there in the middle. And this slide really is meant to help you find the chat feature on your desktop or laptop computer. But as a reminder, please, please, please ensure to keep your microphone muted at all times so we don't have a background noise. So here is how you can find the chat and raise hand feature on your mobile device. So you can click on more on the more button. So those little three dots at the bottom of the screen of your phone, located at the bottom. And then you can open the chat window and you can send your questions and your comments there as well. So as I mentioned previously, we will have various polls during the meeting. So you will see a Zoom poll pop up just like in this slide, and it will prompt you to answer a multiple choice question when it is time. So after 20 seconds or so, we will close the poll and we will display the results. So now that we have covered some technical logistics, let's go over the agenda for today. So we will begin with an update on the vehicle miles travel effort and mitigation options that will be presented to the board in March. Following the discussion, we will provide an overview of the sustainable land use framework, including what it is, what it will do, and how we propose to develop the framework. We most definitely will be seeking your input on the preliminary set of principles that have been developed in consideration of best practices and prior stakeholder outreach. And these will be used to guide development of the framework moving forward. So we will also be discussing the Development Feasibility Analysis that is currently underway, starting in 4 unincorporated communities, to share what we learned so far and what you can expect to see in the future. Then we will provide a quick overview of the next steps. And along the way, we will be asking for your input through polling questions. And we will also wrap up with a question and answer session at the end. So once again, this would be the time that you could raise your hand and speak if you would like to. So let's get started. So momentarily, you will see a Zoom poll pop up on your screen. And the idea is, we really want to get a sense of who is participating this evening. So please, if you don't mind, answer these questions, and in less than 20 seconds, we will provide the results. So the question is, I'm here to provide input on behalf of myself, as a member of the public, as an organization, community group, a sponsor group, and other. So far we have 27 people who participated. We have 72% of participants responding. So please, if you can, respond. Beautiful. There's some more answers coming up. Wonderful. Okay, so it looks like, we have a tie. So there are a lot of people that are here representing themselves. So thank you so much for being here. And the other 33% is that they are here to provide input on behalf of an organization. And then we have 17% as a community group, a sponsor group. So thank you for being here. And other, if you are other, could you type on the chat, maybe you can share with us, who are you? Oh, beautiful. All right, so we have interpreters. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. This is great. We have a an awesome team right now. So this is great. Thank you so much for being here. We really are excited and looking forward to get your input. Okay, so let's begin with an update on the vehicle miles travel effort and mitigation options that will be presented to the board in March. Now I'm going to hand it over to Damon for this update. Damon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paola. I'm Damon, as Paola said, and I'm the transportation specialist here in Planning and Development Services. And VMT is one of the subjects that we are bringing to the board on March 1st. I think that this hearing can best be summarized as a check-in. We're not bringing any options for the board to vote on. It's mainly a status check to inform them on work that has been begun and the direction we're headed. And of course, they'll be given an opportunity to give us feedback or more focused direction on any of the items. But it really is just kind of a status check and updating on them on where we're at with some direction they were given to staff. So just a real quick background on Senate Bill 743 and VMT. It was signed into law in 2013, and it changed how jurisdictions analyze transportation impacts from development projects under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Each jurisdiction was required to adopt VMT legislation by July 1 of 2020. The intent of the legislation was to balance the needs of traffic congestions and align them with statewide goals to reduce GHG, to encourage infill development, and to improve public health through active transportation. Now, the board directed staff with a phased approach to implement SB 743. The first phase included two parts. First was the board's adoption of a transportation study guide, which was adopted in September of 2022, just a few months ago. And the second phase, which just got underway, includes the development of a VMT mitigation program with potential partnerships with other agencies throughout the region. The second phase also includes direction on a parcel by parcel analysis, which is now referred to as a development feasibility analysis, as part of an overall sustainable land use framework, which we'll dive into a little bit later in the presentation. Now, the biggest list of phase two is the development of a mitigation program for our jurisdiction or even possibly the region. VMT, quite frankly, has been a real headache for a lot of jurisdictions across the state, and it really boils down to mitigation. VMT is extremely challenging to mitigate. You know, in the old days when you analyze traffic and traffic impacts, A project could construct a signal or widen a road or install a turn pocket to mitigate their transportation impacts. Now that VMT is the metric, they really need to shorten the trip length that people from their project will drive. It really isn't about congestion. One way to mitigate VMT is to construct or fund multimodal infrastructure such as bike, pedestrian, and transit facilities. However, these improvements are most effective when they're installed in areas with higher density of housing and population. In other words, if a project tried to mitigate VMT by building 2 miles of bike lanes in, say, Alpine, they would not get nearly the amount of reduction compared to building lanes in, say, downtown San Diego. So that's why we're going to be working with other jurisdictions and potentially taking some funding that we generate within the county and yet applying it into other outside of our jurisdiction so projects can get more bang for their buck. So there are 3 different types of mitigation programs that we're going to be looking at for the unincorporated area. These include a fee-based program, an exchange program, and a mitigation bank program. Now, the county could also develop a hybrid program where we take a little bit of aspects out of each one of these to provide applicants with more flexibility. We're still very early on in the process. Again, we're not going to the board in March with any sort of a program for approval. We're simply reporting on direction that we're headed and to get any some feedback that they might have. In September, when we adopted the transportation study guide, the board did direct staff to look at wineries in light of VMT. Wineries are one of several land use types that really don't fit neatly into a VMT box for analysis. The heart of SB 743 really is about where people live, work, and shop. And for jurisdictions to be smart about where they locate those 3 types of uses. But yet we still process projects that aren't housing, that aren't employment, or everyday retail type uses. Wineries, hotels, recreation projects, cemeteries, these one-off project types are still subject to VMT because they're subject to CEQA. But yet the intent of the legislation wasn't really to put those uses within VMT efficient areas. With that in mind, staff and the consultant team prepared a VMT analysis specific for wineries to use in the discretionary process. The county has many existing wineries that offer tasting rooms and small event space. Most of these wineries are clustered together in various regions throughout the county. And research indicated that patrons typically visit more than one winery per trip. So as part of the VMT analysis for wineries, all the wineries in the county were mapped. And the analysis supports that additional wineries proposed within 3 miles of existing facilities wouldn't increase regional VMT, and they would be considered to have a less than significant impact. The analysis also pointed how other wineries could be considered small and wouldn't have to prepare analysis or mitigation based on tasting room size and the number of special events. Lastly, regarding VMT, the board did direct staff, gave staff direction with transit opportunity areas or TOAs. And basically what staff's doing is we're trying to identify locations to incentivize infill development and increase transit options within the unincorporated area. In other words, where are the most viable areas to integrate transit with higher residential density and employment density within the unincorporated area? Staff has previously identified conceptual TOAs, including the San Dieguito East Village area, the Lakeside Village area, the Spring Valley and Valle de Oro Village areas, the Sweetwater Community Planning area, the Otay Village, and along the I-15 corridor. Now, these TOAs will be further analyzed and defined as part of the preparation of a programmatic environmental impact report to further define, study, and evaluate the intersection between VMT, land use mitigation, and potential multimodal opportunities. So that's a quick snapshot on what we're bringing to the board in March. And with that, we'll pass it back to Paola.
Thank you, Damon. So if you guys have any questions on what Damon just went over, please type the questions into the chat and the team will get them answered as soon as we can. So yes, now we will provide an overview on the sustainable land use framework, and we will also provide an update on the development feasibility analysis that is currently underway. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lynette.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome. So what we know is that equitable, sustainable, and resilient communities are the sum of many parts, and they include infrastructure, jobs, schools, trees, parks, and the gathering places that bring a sense of home for folks and a sense of place. And so we are looking at, as previously mentioned by Damon, as part of the board's action on VMT, we are looking at taking initial steps on developing an approach for a sustainable land use framework to ensure that all of our communities in the unincorporated area can be resilient, enhance quality of life, and support economic growth. So in the next few slides, we're going to present to you an overview of the Sustainable Land Use Framework, what it is, what it will do, and the initial set of sustainability principles that have been developed to inform this effort going forward. So to address board direction to develop a sustainable land use framework, we want to first address a few questions, starting with what do we mean by sustainability? And so a definition of sustainability developed by the county's Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice in collaboration with our stakeholders is efficiently using and efficiently protecting our natural resources, balancing economic growth, and ensuring just and equitable provision of public services without compromising the ability of future generations to flourish and thrive. So with that, what is a sustainable land use framework? Well, it's a policy framework, and this policy framework informs how the county's communities can grow and evolve in a healthy, resilient, and equitable way in alignment with the county's strategic initiatives and other regional policy efforts, such as the SANDAG's Housing Acceleration Program Strategy, which is referred to as HAP 5Ps. And those are intended to accelerate affordable, fair, and sustainable housing production. So having this clear policy guidance about the board and the community's priorities is particularly important to us in the context of change as new state laws come into play and as we work to rapidly address the concurrent housing and environmental crises that we are encountering. So what will a framework do? The Sustainable Land Use Framework is going to inform how the county can build housing in the right places, can achieve zero carbon future, can support housing for all, can advance regional sustainability, equity, resiliency, and access, and then how we can break barriers together. So the purpose is to efficiently and effectively protect our natural resources while balancing economic growth and ensuring just and equitable provision of public services, and that is without compromising the ability of future generations to also flourish and thrive. So what is the anticipated outcome of all of this? So in addition to supporting a mix of land uses and a range of housing options and higher densities in the VMT efficient and infill areas that Damon had mentioned, the framework is also going to help us to ensure that all incorporated communities outside of VMT efficient and infill areas also continue to thrive regardless of how much housing development they see in the future. In the county, our general plan recognizes that community plans play a critical role in addressing the needs of specific communities within our unincorporated areas. They provide an opportunity for us to increase local community participation in planning and decision-making. And community plans will continue to be used, and it's going to continue to be used as a tool to set place-based goals. Plans, policies, programs, priorities that are specifically focused on the unique qualities and needs of our individual unique communities. The framework's going to assist with these efforts by providing us guidance related to land use, economic development, environmental protection, community revitalization, infrastructure, and service provisions. To complement the county's existing community planning efforts, development capacity analysis, constraints and opportunities analysis, CNAs, and community visioning is all going to be undertaken. So as a first step in this process, we've reviewed existing land uses, conducted best practice research, engaged with a variety of stakeholders. Many of you are on this call to develop an initial set of sustainability principles. And today we want to share the initial set of principles that we will be presenting to the board on March 1st. So the first one is to decarbonize buildings, communities, and transportation through policies and land use, increasing opportunities for sustainable and resilient development and housing for all, supporting green economies, innovative infrastructure, agriculture, and sustainable practices, conserving and protecting existing natural habitats and resources and increasing access to open and green spaces. And then, of course, prioritizing social equity and environmental justice in sustainable land use policies, programs, and plans. The development of the framework is also going to be in alignment with regional priorities, and as I mentioned previously, such as the SANDAG's housing strategies. So I'm going to turn it back over to Viola for a poll.
Yes, thank you, Lynette. So let's, you will start seeing poll number 2. And since we were talking about, since Lynette was mentioning about the sustainability principles, I just really wanted to see, did you guys participate in the first phase defining the sustainability principles? Yes, no, please share with us. Okay, so it looks like really no one has participated on this. So that is really good to know. So thank you for being here and for listening to, these principles this time. And just kind of like as a follow-up question for these, since basically no one has participated in this, which is, good to know. So let's go for poll number 3, please. Oh, sorry, we didn't share the results yet. I apologize. I jumped here, but as you can see the results. No one here has participated defining these principles. So we can share in. All right, and if we could please do poll number 3. And in this case is, we want to just follow up. Do you agree with the initial set of sustainability principles that were presented here? This is great. So love it. Okay. Okay. So the answers are yes, somewhat, but I would make changes. No. And it's changing a little bit, which is good. So I think we can close the poll. And if we can see the results, so 50% of participants agree, with the initial set of sustainability principles. 46 somewhat, but would like to make changes. If you could please share, your thoughts on the chat, we want to hear from you. And one person said no. So also, please, if you don't mind, if you could, just share your comments, your input. We would like to hear that. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for providing your polling responses. Now I'm going to hand it off to Tara to provide an update on the Development Feasibility Analysis, formerly referred to as the Parcel by Parcel effort. Tara, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Paola. Thank you, everyone, for providing your polling responses throughout the presentation. Recognizing that future housing development will occur largely in VMT efficient and infill areas, the board also directed staff to find practical ways to facilitate that development. Specifically, the board directed staff to come back with an approach for a development feasibility analysis. Oh, I hear that I'm a little bit hard to hear me, so I'll try leaning in. In the next slides, we are going to present an overview and status update on the phases of this effort. Okay, is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the first phase of the development feasibility analysis has been completed and consists of identifying concentrations of vacant or redevelopable parcels, otherwise known as hotspots, that could be developed. The second phase will be consultant-led and will ground truth the analysis conducted in the first phase and will bring stakeholders together to better understand the different barriers and different solutions that are needed to encourage development in these areas. This phase will include a constraints and opportunities analysis, a market feasibility analysis, an infrastructure gap analysis led by the Department of Public Works in coordination with the Department of Environmental Health and Quality, and in collaboration with relevant agencies. The infrastructure gap analysis will help us to better understand the infrastructure needed to facilitate development within these areas by assessing the condition of existing infrastructure, analyzing its capacity to support development, and evaluating the costs and feasibility of upgrades and expansions to address infrastructure gaps that act as barriers to development in these areas. This effort is proposed to be initiated in 4 areas. These 4 areas were selected based on location, funding opportunities, leveraging other county efforts underway, and environmental justice considerations. Starting with Buena Creek, the county's only community with rail service, and where we are already forming strategic planning partnerships with North County Transit District, or NCTD. The infill communities of Valle de Oro / Casa de Oro, where we are primed for funding opportunities through the recently adopted Casa de Oro specific plan. And the environmental justice communities of North El Cajon / Lakeside and Spring Valley. The first phase of this analysis identified hotspots of vacant and redevelopable parcels within these communities and mapped the level of constraints within these areas. The outcome of the development feasibility analysis will be a resource for the board when deciding on infrastructure investments in key VMT efficient and infill areas. As described, this effort will begin with a technical exercise to determine the constraints and opportunities within different communities by looking at parcel level data. It will then consider the results of the infrastructure gap assessment and market feasibility analysis to further clarify the development potential of these areas, as well as the order of magnitude of the investments needed to entice development within each area, and also where those investments could lead to the most housing the fastest. Finally, the development feasibility analysis will produce a report that will provide useful technical and financial data on vacant parcels that could reduce initial due diligence costs for developers, as well as spark interest in locations that reveal higher development potential. It will also present potential opportunities for leadership and partnership strategies with other agencies or private entities that could play a pivotal role in building out these areas. I'll hand it back to Paola for our next poll.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tara. So now you are seeing on your screen the next question, which is, how do you want to be engaged on this effort? Would you like public webinars, workshops, small group meetings, just by email, other options? Please, if you can answer the poll. And thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We will try to get to all of the questions and comments. All right, I think we can stop the poll. And most people, 58%, if you can see the results, would like to be engaged by public webinars, workshops. That is great. 17% would prefer small group meetings. 21% will prefer emails. And 4% would prefer other. If you chose other, please maybe you can share. You can type it on the chat, and we can see. So we have, Gloria mentioned workshops, webinars. So thank you so much. That is great. Thank you for sharing the results, Ben. All right. So as next steps, the staff will procure a consultant to conduct the development feasibility analysis within all 4 areas. So staff anticipates to return to the board first on March 1st to provide an overview of the sustainable land use framework, including the preliminary set of sustainability principles and an overview of the development feasibility approach. Then over the next 6 months, we anticipate to return with updates on the progress of the development feasibility analysis and options for a sustainable land use framework, including an overview of alignment with recent legislation that could further increase housing capacity as part of the housing zoning ordinance update. And this would be in spring 2023. A discussion of how a development feasibility analysis could assist in identifying sites for alternative compliance for consideration as part of the inclusionary housing ordinance options. And also, the staff anticipates returning to the board in the fall, this fall 2023, with an infrastructure gap analysis map and report, an executed MOU with North County Transit District for partnering and collaborating efforts with Buena Creek, and in specific timelines and rough order magnitude costs to complete the development feasibility analysis. Additionally, in the fall, the staff will bring forward more information on the development potential and strategies for each of the 4 communities and options for a sustainable land use framework, including any proposed refinements to the sustainability principles. So that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for attending and for your participation. On this slide, you can see my contact information if you have any questions or suggestions. And with that, we're going to open up and look at the questions that we had. Please bear with me. I'm going to scroll down. All of the comments. Wow, thank you so much. So there are some comments. So trying to get to the top here. Okay, so Monica, do the infill areas require any VMT mitigation? With Damon, could you please help us with that?
Yes, I will. And it also can answer Tracy's question, the next one, kind of asking the same thing, which is basically who's going to pay, right?
Perfect.
And infill areas, and Ben sharing the screen. This was our map that the board adopted in September, and this shows the infill and VMT efficient areas. If a development project is proposed within these areas, they're considered not to have an impact, so they don't need to pay a fee. And so Tracy's asking on who will pay. It's projects that are outside these areas or aren't screened out otherwise. This is not a tax that's going to be applied to drivers. I know there's a lot of confusion regarding that subject because Sandag currently is proposing what they call a VMT tax, which is a road user charge. That's gotten a lot of press. This is not that. We unfortunately share the same acronym, so there is confusion there, but this is strictly a fee that will be assessed to projects that need to mitigate. Right now, projects are having a tough time, if not an impossible time, to mitigate. And so this is going to be something that's going to hopefully provide an avenue for them to get their projects moving forward without having to do an EIR and asking for overriding considerations. So hopefully that clears that up.
Thank you, Damon. So then I see a question from Cody. Zero carbon is one small piece of the environmental puzzle. Our ecosystems are dying. Is this something that you can help us, Tyler, with?
Yeah, I can, excuse me. I can help respond to this. And I did give Cody a response in the comment, but just so everyone could hear, we highlighted that, we do have one of our sustainability principles that does carry forward the idea of conservation, protecting natural resources and habitats. And additionally, through public feedback, through previous efforts for this project, many folks provided feedback that we should also be looking at regenerative development, which is even further advancing ecosystem protection. And then as a follow-up, Cody did highlight some specific grant effort that he was looking at for the very specific project. And thank you for bringing that up, Cody. And just kind of want to highlight that the effort that we're looking forward to push forward here with these principles is really to help impact future planning tools and land use decisions moving forward. So this whole idea is to find ways to advance principles to look at land use and planning tools in the future as a way to support those kind of efforts. But I do appreciate the feedback and the comments here, Cody.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, so then we have sorry, guys.
I can respond to questions. So Tracy, thank you for your question. You had asked what the difference is of the framework and the general plan, and if these principles are already in the general plan. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at, we do currently have a land use framework in our general plan. It's called the Community Development Model. Some of you might be familiar with it. It basically is concentric, where we have villages and we focus development within the village areas and then kind of extrapolate out to the very rural areas. So in light of new state law and regional policies and additional regulations that we have, what this process is how can we bring all of that in alignment and ensure that we are providing folks an ability to continue to thrive, development to occur quicker, faster, but sustainably. So with that, that is one of the things we're looking at. So we are looking at our existing general plan. Does it need to be modified? Can we do, amend policies? Do we need to do a larger effort? So all of that is part of the process that we will be undertaking within the next year. So TBD on that, to be determined what the outcome will be.
Perfect, thank you.
Very
Sarah, could you help us answer the question about the documents being posted?
Definitely. There was a question, I believe it came in through Ben, about whether or not these documents would be posted after the meeting. And yes, we will be posting not only the recording of the presentation that we provided tonight, as well as this Q&A session, but also the slides themselves. In addition, we'll also be posting, for any questions we're not able to get to tonight, kind of a summary document, a Q&A summary document after the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Damon, Monica also has some questions about BNT mitigation for infill areas that are inefficient.
Yep.
Could you please help us with that one?
Absolutely, Monica. I'm glad you brought that up. So one thing that we are going to look at, and I mentioned in my presentation, that we get more bang for the buck with our mitigation when we put it into areas where that are dense or that have transit. Like say if we were to send the money to the city of San Diego. One thing that the board is very clear on is that they don't want every penny that we raise to go to outside of our jurisdiction. And so currently right now, say there's a development project proposed in Alpine, if they were to propose mitigation, it would pretty much only focus on their development or any aspect of their development touches. With this program, we're going to look at being able to take the funds from those areas and apply them to our infill areas, into areas within the county that need it the most. And so I mentioned the transit opportunity areas. Spring Valley that you mentioned was one of the big circles on the map, where we are absolutely, even though projects are screened out and projects themselves won't be required to mitigate if they're located within Spring Valley, there will be a mechanism for projects outside of Spring Valley to pay the fees, whether it's a fee program or an exchange program, and those improvements will be within the infill areas, and Spring Valley definitely is one of the ones that would receive those. So hopefully that clears up a little bit. So a project located within Spring Valley would be screened out and not be required to mitigate, but yet any projects located outside the infill areas, their mitigation dollars could be used within Spring Valley.
Thank you, Damon. So Sean has a question as well in regards to how does this effort compare to the pending CAP smart growth alternative? Is this something that you can help us with, Tyler?
Yes, I can help here, and I'm just pulling up some notes on the side. So with this effort, we are looking at principles that are going to shape, future land use decisions and cover those big 5 principles that we highlighted on the screen previously. And through the Climate Action Plan update, we are also looking at a smart growth alternative, which is also going to find ways to achieve more compact, efficient, and environmentally sensitive pattern of development within the unincorporated area that really focuses on growth away from rural areas and closer to planned job centers. So there is a lot of overlap between these 2 efforts. There is just a difference in timing. We're moving forward with these principles now, and then the Climate Action Plan update and its smart growth alternative will take feedback and information from this effort as well. So there's a lot of overlap and similarities within the concepts, but first going to the board will be these principles and related to the hearing that we highlighted here.
Thank you, Tyler.
Paula, I can speak to Sina's questions she had regarding home ownership opportunities in the principles and community gardens. And so to clarify for folks, these are an initial set of principles, and what our hope is that through additional community stakeholder input and engaging with folks such as yourself, that we will be able to expand, refine, make more specific policies and these principles into policies. And so related to home ownership, for example, we have the sustainability principle that speaks to increasing opportunities for sustainable and resilient development and housing for all. So home ownership opportunities would fall within that. But getting more specific to home ownership is what we would be looking at to refine and expand. And then for the community gardens, we do have the conserve and protect existing natural habitats and resources, and then increasing access to open and green spaces. So that would potentially fall within that sustainability principle. So thank you for those comments, and we'll definitely make note of those specific questions and input.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lynette. We also have a comment from Tracy in regards to EJ, environmental justice. What does environmental justice means? Tara, could you please help us with that?
Of course. So environmental justice means the fair treatment of people of all races, cultures, incomes, with respect to the development and implementation of different planning laws and policies. So for example, in this case, the implementation of the county's zoning ordinance, our general plan. And then planning for social equity means recognizing that planning practices in the past may have had a disparate impact on certain communities. And so now we're actively working to make sure that moving forward, we're creating better communities for all residents, regardless of, what happened in the past. We want to move forward and make sure that we're providing fair treatment and equitable practices as we continue forward with our planning efforts.
Thank you, Tara.
Paula, Sean Kilkenny had a question too that was related to, in light of the different county efforts underway, how will the county continue to support affordable housing? Or how do we, anticipate being able to provide affordable housing? And so, Sean, that's where the development feasibility analysis comes in, and we were directed by the board to look at where we could put housing in the right places and incentivize and support that. And so we're looking at a variety of things through that effort. Tara mentioned some of that, but one of them being an infrastructure gap analysis that's being conducted. So this is a reconnaissance level survey at this point of infrastructure within those areas and where there are gaps, and how the county could support bringing in infrastructure into those areas, what the cost would be in rough order of magnitude, to support either through private-public partnerships or some other way that would assist in bringing development in those areas quicker, and also to help support that so that all of that wouldn't be provided by the developer. So looking at innovative ways to do that in collaboration with the development community.
And I'll add on to that too a little bit, Lynette. Regarding VMT, affordable housing projects that are 100% affordable are not subject to VMT, or they're considered to have a less than significant impact. So they can be built anywhere within the county, infill or VMT efficient, outside those areas, and not have to deal with VMT or have to pay a mitigation fee.
Okay, team. Did I miss any questions that you can see? I think.
We can actually go to folks raising their hand if we didn't get to your question, if we missed it. If anyone wants to raise their hand. We will also be downloading the chat from this meeting, and we will, when we post this presentation, we will be able to do responses to questions if we missed any.
Perfect. So it looks like we have Judy raising her hand.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Yes.
Thank you. My question is, I live in Bonita, and we are impacted very negatively by by all the development in Chula Vista, in East Chula Vista. This traffic generator does not use the toll road. They drive through our Bonita streets. And we are small, kind of rural. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the police force. We don't have any way to deal with this incredible amounts of traffic. So how are you going to be interacting with cities and how their projects affect county areas that are adjacent?
Thank you for that question, Judy. I think one of the things that we are looking at are those regional partnerships. And so we had mentioned that one of our deliverables coming back in the fall to the board is looking at memorandum of understandings with other agencies. We specified North County Transit District, but we really are starting in those 4 communities looking at, and Sweetwater will be coming online shortly thereafter. Sweetwater is one of our environmental justice communities, and that includes the most eastern part of the Bonita area. that we will be partnering with regional partners, looking at entering into formal agreements for collaboration and partnership to bring transit into areas, to bring funding into that for any other needs related to multimodal opportunities. So I think that would be our way of addressing that, would be through those partnerships that we don't have land use authority with.
Okay, and how about Sandag? Because it's really their policy for how they bill the users of the 125 that is destroying our community. The prices are very high and people can't afford it. So they drive through our neighborhoods just like it's a highway. But I think Sandag policy has been a huge negative influence on how our area gets from point A to point B. And they have documented up to 10,000 cars a day. And this was a few years ago, maybe more now, but it's like 10,000 cars a day who are avoiding the toll and driving through Bonita neighborhoods. And, you know, I mean, it's just reached the point where we can't handle it anymore.
Understood. Thank you for that input, Judy. And Sandag is definitely one of our regional partners. Our chairwoman Vargas and is also your district representative, is
Yes.
the chairwoman of the board of Sandag now. So that relationship is growing even stronger with that, and we are actively engaging with them on the regional plan, the addendum to the 2021 as well as the 2025 regional plan. If you have not been involved in that process, we'd be happy to send you some information on how you can provide comments through that process, and that does address those regional connections for transportation, such as the 125.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Lynette. I see another hand. Is Gloria Conejo?
Hi, yeah, my question is, sorry, I think I walked out of the room. So if I apologize if like y'all had already addressed this, but what, I guess like where in regards to these plans, would we get more access to transit in the North Inland area, like Fallbrook and like Valley Center and Palm Valley, that area, because there's not really a lot of access to public transit, and it is an environmental justice community in some of these areas. There's not really a lot of access to grocery stores and fire hazards and etc. So I guess just to get back to my point about the transit, where would we fall under that?
I can take a crack at this one. Regarding this current effort, do you see on the screen now, we've identified some transit opportunity areas where transit and housing densities could be explored to further expand transit in an unincorporated area. The 15 corridor was an area that was identified. We do have so much traffic that does come down from Riverside County and of course from North County down to downtown every day. So that is an area that we're going to be exploring. As far as further out east in the North County, I mean, we can obviously work closely with Sandag and their development of their RTP for some transit expansion up in that area, but out east is really not a point of emphasis for this effort because we don't really see a lot of future densities in housing headed out that way. It's trying to more rein it into the western edge of the unincorporated area.
Yeah, and Gloria, I'll add, to Damon's point, Damon's kind of talking about, kind of the immediate items that could relate to increased transit. And obviously Sandag is, driving most of that. But on the principle side, these are concepts that are going to drive conversations that will have impacts, much into the future. And one of the, I believe it's the very first principles talks about decarbonization of buildings, communities, and transportation too. So I would suggest and urge you to kind of stay involved and we can carry through your comments on that. So future decisions that relate to land use can bring those into consideration as well. So this is the right venue to kind of bring that up, both for the immediate and the long term as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. We have Valerie.
Hello. One of the things that I have noticed from living in Vista is that there is, okay, we have a lot of congestion on the 5 and the 15. Part of the reason for that is that people have to drive very long distances to get to east-west routes. If you're going to have someone who is working and wants to go someplace that's not exactly along the coast, they have to make their way somewhere between those two very large arteries. And the only thing that seems viable at this time is still going to be cars, mainly because of the contours of the land. You've got a lot of canyons, and the shape of the land doesn't make it easy to build the to build something like trains or underground, or I suppose you could use buses. But it seems like you're getting a little bit ahead of yourselves without having that east-west flow. Is there anything that's being considered about that, or are you just dead set on getting rid of cars?
I can try to take that. I'm not a transportation planner, Damon, but
Well, if you're going to have people living in these places, it's nice to have. I like the idea of being able to walk to work. Okay, that would be wonderful, but that's not San Diego.
Understood. So as part of the comprehensive approach to this, we're looking at I'm going to use Sandag as an example. I can see from the comments that some folks aren't fans, but as part of the future going forward, as part of the Sandag's 2021 regional plan, it's called the 5 big moves. And one of the things that they are looking at is that when you are not in those more urbanized areas, providing things that are called flexible fleets. So you had mentioned buses or other alternatives. They're looking at innovative ways to get folks from point A to point B, where those job centers are, so that you don't have to get into an individual car. So trying to get away from single occupant vehicles. So it's not the case that vehicles can't be on the road. It's just having them be sustainable vehicles and having more than one person in them, I think, is the ultimate goal. Because again, we're already developed in a lot of areas, and it is difficult to bring in transit in some of these places, like you had mentioned, due to geography. However, I think that that's where those innovations come into different ways to get folks from point A to point B.
And I'll add, we're getting into the heart of why this is so challenging for our jurisdiction. State law changed to where road building and widening facilities, building new roads, is extremely difficult, if not impossible to do in light of SB 743. I mean, state law changed. We no longer look at traffic congestion. We can't as part of the CEQA process. Now, we could still do some spot widenings here and there, but it's a very challenging world, and that's why that we're doing this effort and focusing so much on what else we can do to get people around this county by looking at these transit opportunity areas, by trying to do what we can do in the RTP and expanding what's proposed in the RTP into our jurisdiction because of this new world that we have to live in. And you bring up some very good points that really are what we're wrestling with as staff to try to figure out what's going to work best for our unincorporated area. So we understand completely where you're coming from, and that's just the world we're living in, and we're trying to make it work, but it's challenging, to say the least.
Okay, now I've got another question, because what you're telling me is that the state apparently wants to spend the money that's already been allocated for some highway improvement projects on something different from what the voters authorized? Is that what you're telling me?
If projects were already approved, meaning road projects were already approved, gone through the environmental process, they can continue forward.
Okay.
Projects that haven't, they still can if there's political will, but yet there's a lot more roadblocks than there used to be, and that's revolving around mitigation.
Yeah.
And transportation agencies statewide are really struggling with this, Sandag included.
Well, it seems to me that if the, if the voters approved something and and they approved it and they were given that should be spent on what the money was approved for, or else turn back to the voters. Should we be asking for a refund?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's kind of more bigger regional issues that are outside of our jurisdictions and what
Well,
we
yeah, but it's
control over.
strangling this effort. It's strangling this effort here, because it'd be a lot easier to get back and, there are a couple of projects that would seem to be addressing that east-west problem. And if they're not going to go forward, then it's going to be a mess. I mean, where I am, there's a fair amount of driving. If I want to get over, I'm close to both the 15 and the 5, but the north-south routing, puts a lot of distance. It's like you've got to go around three sides of a rectangle to get to other places, even in North County.
Yeah, understood. We appreciate that. Yeah, we know it's a challenging times for sure.
Well, the thing is that this particular issue is something that's kind of important to our younger people, like my kid who works for a brewery, and increasing the price of gas and telling him to buy a new car is a reallocation of his resources.
Thank you, Valerie. Definitely understood. We get it. And someone had put in the chat that I think it might have been Tracy as well, or someone else, that trying to understand how all of these efforts in PDS are happening together. And like Damon said, the reason that we're taking a comprehensive approach and pulling together all of these efforts is because there is so much going on. There's a lot going on at the state level and the regional level, and even at the local level. So we are hoping that through this framework and through this effort that we will be able to bring this together into one cohesive approach going forward. So that's what the framework is to provide a framework to which we can all work within, with all these different efforts that are occurring. So Ben, you've been very patient and have your hand up. If we could go to you next.
Well, thank you, Lynette. And I know it's late, and I thought I'd bring it back to the wineries that Damon raised. Since that sounds like a fun topic. No, seriously, my firm actually is working on some stuff out in Borrego, and I was interested in the fact that you had sort of done a specific analysis for wineries, because they don't really fit neatly into the VMT analysis. And you could say the same for Borrego in a way. I mean, it's isolated. It's really got a lot of reliance on tourism. It's hard to do the same kind of VMT analysis to allow any kind of development to keep that economy going out there. But just in applying the kinds of analysis you guys are required to apply per state law. And I was wondering what your thoughts are, Damon, on how you treat an area like Borrego, which is so far away. It's not an infill community. It doesn't meet any of the definitions we've been talking about.
Right, you're absolutely right. Borrego is interesting. In our first modeling ABM1, which we used with our initial guidelines, Borrego Springs was VMT efficient. And Borrego Springs is not that high of a VMT area because of what you said. It's so far out there, it almost acts as an island. And, you know, we argued if somebody's going to go wine tasting, they're probably not going to drive past the 57 we have here on the western edge of our county to go out to Borrego. So you're going to be in Borrego and you're going to go to a winery out there. So there's probably a qualitative approach that could be used for any time analysis out in Borrego Springs, because it is so far out that it doesn't act or behave or have the same travel characteristics as other part of the county. It really is its own island out there. So if you want to reach out to me, we can discuss this further, but I think there's definitely some approaches that could be used out for any project out in Borrego, whether it's a winery or retail, housing, anything like that.
Great. Thanks, Damon. I will reach out to you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Anybody else? I'm not seeing any hands. Well, yeah.
Sorry, it looks like we just got one more question actually, from Tracy, if you don't mind. And Tracy asked, I want to know if you could make use of redeveloping old malls and storefronts that are decrepit and ailing and used for housing. Most of it is not within the county area, but if you're working with the cities, redeveloping old storefronts makes sense to me. And boy, do I have some cool news for you, which is that actually in the last legislative session, 2022, there were two bills that passed, SB 6 and AB 2011, that actually have to do with housing in commercial zones. So that will be a change that will be coming down. That's going to be effective July 1st of this year. And we're still trying to study the impacts of that, but that is actually something that's pretty new coming out of the state legislature. That's all sorry, jumping in last minute. I just saw it. I couldn't help. I couldn't resist.
Thank you, Ben.
And Ben, I'll add on to that as well. That's also something that we're going to be looking at further as part of the development feasibility analysis. We are going to be looking at recent changes to state legislation and how those can be used to enable additional density within mixed use zones, within commercial zones, as Ben mentioned, and we'll be putting that together as part of the report. You know, starting in those 4 initial areas, but then expanding from there as well to see what that looks like in terms of implementation. And I'll add as well, we posted in the chat the contact information as well as the website, the engagesanDiegoCounty.gov/sustainable framework. And that's where we will be posting the information from today's meeting.
Anybody else has any questions? And, you know, and if you cannot think of a question right now, but after, you know, you think about, or, you know, you process all of this information, please feel free to send us an email. We have also the website, and as we mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this meeting and it will be posted on the project website. Also, we will be reviewing the chat and posting a summary question and answer online as well. Well, thank you everybody for attending. In my opinion, this was very useful time and helpful. So thank you for being here. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for your comments and your input. We truly value your input. And yeah, just, you know, if you have questions, reach out. But thank you so much. And with that, we will conclude our meeting. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And thank you to the interpreters for providing service too. We appreciate it.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.